A dead hang is very indicative of grip strength. And as we know, decreased grip strength is linked to cognitive decline, fall risk, and increased mortality.
54% of adults over the age of 40 can't do 10 push-ups. 40 plus push-ups consecutive is linked to a 96% lower risk of developing any type of heart disease. Welcome to MD Longevity Lab, where we're playing the long game. This is a podcast where science meets real life with expert insights, practical tips, and real-world tools to not only live longer, but live better. Our aim is to radically change the way medicine is practiced and enable individuals to age gracefully, maintaining health span and vitality well into their later years. We're your hosts, Dr. Nisha and Dr. Vikas Patel, physicians, partners in life, and parents balancing work, wellness, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to the MD Longevity Lab podcast, where we are playing the long game. I'm your host, Dr. Vikas Patel, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Nisha Patel. Thank you guys for joining us, and let's dive right in.
I'm super excited about this episode. Over the age of 40, health span is the goal, right? When most people think about aging, they're thinking in terms of lifespan, which is how long we live. But we care more about health span.
The goal is that however long we're going to live, we want to make sure that we have remained completely functional. And that's really what the concept of health span is.
In the US, the average lifespan is around 76 for men and 80 for women. But the average health span, it's about 65 for men and 67 for women. So that's 20% of our lifetime that we spend in decline. And we have come to normalize that in this country. And that is just average. And by the way, the US has the largest gap between health span and lifespan out of all 187 countries studied.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, we spend so much money on healthcare in this country, and somehow we have the worst results out of 187 countries. Like, yes, modern medicine has actually been able to extend our lifespans, but specific to our culture, all of that money and modern medicine has not helped us in closing that gap between health span, where we're remaining disease-free and functional, with lifespan, which is how long we're actually going to live. So average, really is not optimal. And at MD Longevity Lab, we're really aiming for something a lot better than average. We're really trying to aim to keep you guys and our patients in the top 25% where it counts as far as both health span and lifespan matter.
Yeah, and that's where the real benefits live, right? So more strength, better mobility, sharper cognition, and fewer chronic diseases. This episode is a must listen for anyone who is looking to age well using free metrics at home. We're going to walk you through 9 simple science-backed tests that you can do at home or at the gym to assess your longevity fitness. Things like grip strength, balance, cardio endurance, and there's no lab work needed.
Yeah, these are basically 9 science-backed tests, and it's really a good measure of what really allows us to remain functional in the long run. And a lot of that has to do with how our body actually moves. You don't need any fancy equipment. This is really just a good, plain way to make an assessment of how functional we are. And how functional we are now really provides a lot of insight into how functional we're going to be in the future. These tests really look at strength, mobility, what our cardiorespiratory fitness is, how well our balance and coordination are. And all of these things are incredible predictors of health span.
Just remember, as we're going through these tests, most adults struggle with at least one, if not many, of these 9 exercises. And that's okay. It just means that there's room to grow. We don't want you guys to be intimidated. We all have to start somewhere. We aren't aiming for normal aging. We're aiming for optimal aging. And optimal doesn't mean perfect. It just means progress.
For each of these 9 tests, we'll walk you through the average performance for a 40-year-old and then show you what it takes to be in the top 25% or even top 10%. We'll show you the optimal range for health span. Whether you're below average right now or, honestly crushing it, this episode should give you a little bit of a roadmap on how to level up.
Let's start with test number 1, the 1 mile run. It's just running 1 mile as fast as you can, ideally outdoors or on a treadmill without breaks.
Yeah. Why does this matter? Well, this matters from a perspective of VO2 max, right? We've covered this topic previously. VO2 max is literally measuring the amount of oxygen that our body can use as fuel. And this is one of the strongest modifiable and predictable factors that go into both health span and lifespan. So you've heard us say this before, but literally having a low cardiorespiratory fitness, meaning being in the bottom 25th percentile versus being in the top quartile, there's literally a almost 300% difference in mortality rates between being in that top 25% versus the bottom 25%. And if you think about just the top 2.5%, so the people we consider elite, there's over a 400% difference in mortality rate.
Let's go through average times for 40-year-old men and women. For men, it's between 8.5 minutes and 9.5 minutes for a mile. That's average. For women, it's between a 10 and an 11-minute mile.
Yeah. So when we're talking about these average times, really, we're talking about the middle half of a bell curve, right? So we're really talking about where are most people at? The people between the bottom 25th and the top 75th. What does that middle look like? So the average times being for men 8:30 to 9:30, you may not be in that range, and that's fine. We just need to know that this is kind of where most of the people fall. And the same thing for women between 10 and 11.
So those are average times. Now let's cover the top 25th percentile for people over the age of 40. So for men, it's between 7.5 and 8 minutes for a mile. And for women in the top 25th percentile at age 40, it's between 8.5 and a 9-minute mile.
Yeah, there's several factors that affect these benchmarks. So there are very few people who are 40 years old who are not regularly doing some type of cardio activity, whether it's playing a sport regularly or actually running regularly, that are going to hit the 25th percentile, right? Where they're hitting 7:30-minute miles for men or 8:30 for women. The things that influence this is really several things. So it's body weight and body composition, how much muscle we have versus how much fat we have, what our current fitness level is, and running experience. If you're not an efficient runner, it's difficult to get these times. And then how consistently we're training. This is not an achievement that you can have by just running once a month or twice a month. This is someone that's training twice a week typically and working progressively over a couple of years to get these kinds of times.
So if you guys remember from our VO2 max episode, your VO2 max drops about 10% per decade after the age of 30 if you are not training. If you're training, it can either stay the same or that decrease is minimal. And remember, less than 50% of adults over the age of 40 can run a mile without stopping. So if you can just keep a slow jog for a mile, you are in the top 50th percentile.
Part of this is understanding how to run. Most people will go out too fast, and if they're not used to running, there's no way they can keep that pace up for an entire mile. If you're trying to go at just a very, very slow jog, then your likelihood of finishing is much better. And that's actually the key to getting faster. It's actually doing those slow runs where you feel like I'm not working that hard. That's actually how to get there. And for people who are new to running, the goal should be walk, run, walk, run, walk, run, until you're building up your tolerance enough. And eventually you can build that out further so that you're able to finish a whole 1 mile run without actually having to stop.
Yeah, many 40-year-olds who are new to running, they might initially take 12 to 15 minutes to run a mile. And that's completely normal. The key is starting where you are and gradually improving. We covered the 1 mile run. Let's move to at-home test number 2, the dead hang. Vikas, why don't you tell us what a dead hang is?
Yeah, so a dead hang is almost what it sounds like. You're literally just hanging from a bar. So ideally, you have some type of pull-up bar and you're just hanging with your arms fully extended and your body just hanging long as possible.
Why does this matter? A dead hang is very indicative of grip strength. And as we know, decreased grip strength is linked to cognitive decline, fall risk, and increased mortality. So how is grip strength meaningful? Grip strength is a proxy for strength, and people who have a higher grip strength have overall high muscle strength and mass, and thus they're prone to less injury.
Yeah, they're prone to less falls, and that also goes along with less impaired glucose tolerance, which is what leads to type 2 diabetes. So you'll see a common theme here with a lot of the things that we're testing. These are all different ways to measure our body's strength. And when we are strong, we reduce the likelihood of falling, we reduce the likelihood of injury. We know that in order to maintain strength over a long period of time, our brain has to do a lot of work, and that reduces the likelihood of neurocognitive disorders like dementia.
So let's go through the average dead hang time for 40-year-olds. For men, average is between 15 and 30 seconds. For women, average is between 5 and 15 seconds. And full disclosure, when I started, I was at 3 seconds. And I was pretty shocked because I just remember flying across the monkey bars in grade school. And so when you asked me to do a dead hang, I was like, yeah, no problem. I can probably do this one-handed and beat this number.
The monkey bars thing is super hard,
Especially as an adult.
super difficult as an adult. Like I can do pull-ups. I've always been able to do pull-ups, but doing the monkey bars where you're actually transitioning from just holding with one hand, swinging and holding with another hand, it requires a ton of grip strength. It requires a ton of core strength through your shoulder girdles. I struggle quite a bit. And as a kid, I mean, every kid does this, right? It's like a staple of the playground.
Yep. So now for the top 25th percentile of 40-year-olds, men are between 45 and 60 seconds, and women are between 20 and 30 seconds. So I have now worked my way up. I'm at about 25 seconds. And that took me about a year and a half of practicing.
Yeah, a couple of things to note here. Every 5 kilogram drop in grip strength increases your risk of dying by 16%. So 5 kilogram drop, that's about 12 pounds of weight, right? 11 pounds of weight. Every time that we reduce our grip strength by that much, we're increasing our risk of dying by 16%. And tied closely to that, we know that weak grip strength is linked to about a 72% higher risk of developing dementia.
And you might fall off in 15 seconds, or you might fall off in 3 seconds like I did, and that's fine. Hang a little bit longer each week, and before you know it, you are going to be in the top 25%.
Yeah. And if in case anybody's like, I got this and I want to shoot for something higher, you're trying to get around to the top 10th percentile. For men, if you're getting up to 90 seconds, and for women, you're getting up over a minute. We'll move into number 3, at-home test, and that's ties nicely into the dead hang. Once you've mastered the dead hang, pull-ups are the next thing. So what are pull-ups? You're essentially starting from that dead hang position and you're pulling your body up with your chin over the bar using your upper body strength. And just so we're clear, there's a difference between pull-ups and chin-ups. In chin-ups, you're using, your palms are actually facing you. In pull-ups, your palms are faced away from you.
And so pull-ups are a little bit harder.
Generally, pull-ups are a little bit harder than chin-ups because you're not getting to use your biceps as much. You have to use your forearm muscles more. So tell us why this matters.
Pull-ups measure the neuromuscular and upper body strength, which is critical for posture, metabolism, and daily function. So let's go through the average pull-up numbers for 40-year-olds. For men, average is between 1 and 3 pull-ups. So many men can't even do 1 at age 40. For women, average is between 0 and 1 pull-ups, and the majority cannot do a full pull-up. Full disclosure, I remember 2 years ago when we started Longevity Lab, you had asked me to do a pull-up. And I was like, yeah, no problem. Like, I can do that with my eyes closed. It's a lot harder than it looks. And that also took me about a year and a half to work up to doing even 1 pull-up. And then one day at the gym, all of a sudden I did it and I looked around and no one was there.
Everybody is cheering. Everyone's standing ovation.
No, that's what they should have been doing, but they weren't. But then I remember I texted you. I looked around, it was empty. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I have no one to encourage me. So I did text you. And
I was super excited for it.
Yes, it took me a year and a half. So top 25th percentile for 40-year-old. For men, it's between 5 and 8 pull-ups. For women, it's between 1 and 3 pull-ups.
Yeah, this is a super difficult exercise because our legs do the majority of work for our body as we get older, right? And if you're not playing a sport or specifically doing resistance training that requires a bunch of upper body strength, we just don't hang on to it as we get older. So do not be discouraged if you can't do a pull-up, because the vast majority of adults actually can't. And really, studies show that somewhere between 50 and 70% of men and 85 to 90% of women in their 40s can't do a single pull-up. So this isn't really due to laziness. This is just that this requires a specific type of training in order to get what you're looking for.
Yeah, so let's talk about why pull-ups are so challenging. Pull-ups require high strength to weight ratio. It uses multiple groups simultaneously, and most daily activities don't replicate this movement pattern, as you mentioned. And many people carry more body weight than in their younger years.
Yeah, especially for us in this country, because we have grown in size, and I mean waist size, as time has gone on, that strength to weight ratio, unfortunately, is not moving in the correct direction. And this is one of the main drivers, right? It's way easier if I'm 5'9" and I weigh 160 pounds, way easier for me to do 1 pull-up than if I'm 5'9" and I weigh 200 pounds. And the majority of that extra 40-pound difference is fat and not muscle.
So can you tell us, if our goal is to do a pull-up and we're not there yet, what are some of the exercises that we can do to get there?
Yeah. So number one, just the dead hang alone is helpful, right? Because that in the dead hang, we're working on just grip strength. So slowly building up your grip strength and just hanging and being able to hang for 30 seconds up to 60 seconds, that will go part of the way. While you're doing your dead hang training, you can also incorporate a couple exercises or variations to help with pull-ups. So you can start at the top position, right? You can, if you have a box or something to step up with, then you can start off with your arms flexed all the way with your chin up at the bar and try and hold that as long as you can and slowly lower yourself down over 2 or 3 seconds. If you can get to a point where you're doing that 10 times in a row, and then you're gaining a lot of the strength that would allow you to then go up and not just go down. So generally, I coach patients that we want to get to a point where we can do 8 to 10 of those reverse pull-ups, where all we're doing is working on the eccentric part, which is the lengthening out of the muscles. Do that for 3 sets. You can also use bands, right? So if you tie a band, if you're stepping on a band with your feet and that band is tied up to the bar, then that's another way to reduce a little bit of the body weight that your body has to fight against to pull itself back up. If you're going to a gym, there's machines that allow you to do the same thing. The goal is that you're slowly building up strength, and there's a bunch of different ways to do that.
Yep. So let's tackle number 4, push-ups.
Yeah. So what are push-ups? Push-ups basically are us starting with our arms extended on the ground and We're basically more or less in a plank position, and we bend our arms, keeping our elbows at about 45 degrees so that we're not putting bad stress on our shoulders. And you bend down, get your nose pretty close to the ground, and then you extend your elbows back out to full extension. And this can be performed in a couple different ways. You can do it with your feet fully extended where you're on your toes. And you can also do it where if you're just kind of starting out, you can start off doing it from your knees. And the difference is that you're not carrying as much of your body weight.
Yeah. So why do push-ups matter? So push-ups test your upper body strength and endurance, and it's a strong predictor of cardiovascular health too. So let's go through the average number of push-ups that 40-year-olds can do. For men, on average, they can do between 15 and 20 push-ups. For women, it's between 8 and 12 push-ups for average. And now for the top 25th percentile, for men in their 40s, it's between 25 and 35 push-ups to be in the top 25th percentile. For women, it's between 15 and 20 push-ups to be in the top 25th percentile. So let's talk about why push-ups are more achievable than pull-ups.
Yeah, push-ups are a lot more accessible because one, in a pull-up, you have to pull literally your full body weight. So 100% of your body weight is what you're trying to move. In push-ups, because your feet are anchored to the ground, you're only moving 65 to 70% of your body weight. And apart from that, there's a lot more activities in life where we are pushing things away from us compared to us reaching over our body and trying to pull something down to us. And so a couple other statistics that are relevant here so that no one's feeling really frustrated. 54% of adults over the age of 40 can't do 10 push-ups. So please don't get frustrated if you find that you're not even at that average stage yet. 40 plus push-ups consecutive is linked to a 96% lower risk of developing any type of heart disease.
Yeah. And so we have a lot of patients with a genetic predisposition to cardiovascular disease. They may have tested positive for Lp(a), or they may have a positive coronary calcium score. And we encourage them to start training with push-ups.
Absolutely. Let's go on to number 5, the farmer's carry. The farmer's carry is essentially carrying something heavy in both of your hands while walking. And this is really a functional movement, right? Like we can all have the experience of having your groceries in the car and trying to carry all these bags into the house and trying to do it all in one trip. Well, that's basically a farmer's carry. When we're doing it for strength training purposes, we typically are doing it carrying a kettlebell or a heavy dumbbell.
A farmer's carry tests your grip strength, your posture, your core strength, and your real world functional resilience. Farmer's carry is something that I started incorporating into workouts about 2 years ago. And I literally started with about a 15-pound dumbbell in each hand, and that's 30 pounds. And we have certain goals for percentage of our body weight, and that's how we measure how good we are to farmer's carry. So let's go through some average numbers for farmer's carry for 40-year-olds. On average, if you're 40, it takes about 30 to 35 seconds to walk 50 yards. For men, they can carry about 40 to 50% of their body weight per hand on average. And for women, they can carry about 30 to 40% of their body weight per hand.
Yeah. So what we're measuring here is carrying that amount of weight in each hand for about 50 yards, which is about 30 seconds. And so, if you're carrying about 50% for a man in your left hand and 50% in your right hand, and you can do that for walking 50 yards, then you're average strength. And about the same for women, they're carrying between 30 and 40% walking about the same distance.
I'm about 130 pounds, roughly. I started out carrying 15-pound dumbbell, that's it, in each hand for 30 seconds, and I was struggling. After about 2 years of training, I'm now up to 50 pounds in each hand for 30 seconds.
Yeah. So you're crushing it, right? So you're well above average at this point, and all of this training that you've been doing, consistently doing it and slowly increasing the weight over time, or increasing the distance that you're traveling, holding lower weights, it's significantly improving your core strength, your cardiovascular reserve, as well as your grip strength.
Yeah. So for listeners that might be discouraged that this doesn't even sound attainable, everyone's got to start somewhere. And that's why we encourage you guys to do some of these tests at home or at the gym just to get a baseline and see where you're at.
Yeah. So the top 25th percentile is being able to double that distance, right? Instead of walking 50 yards, you're walking 100 yards. So this is basically walking a minute, and you're carrying, for men, you're carrying 50 to 60% of your body weight in each hand. So you can be over 100% of your body weight total, and you're carrying that for a full minute for men. For women, we say if they can carry about 50% of their body weight in each hand and do that for 75 yards. So 45 seconds of walking. And that would put them into the top 25th percentile. One of the beautiful things about the farmer's carry is this is 100% a functional metric, right? This is like something we have to actually do in life all the time. We always have to carry things from point A to point B. And we should want to be able to have that type of strength because it's actually useful to us. Doing a pull-up isn't necessarily super useful in our day-to-day. It does help us in a lot of different ways to improve our health, but it's not as functional of a movement as a farmer's carry is.
Yeah, I definitely took advantage of having a brawny husband when we would travel because I would make Vikas carry all the luggage. And now I consider it a badge of honor. If Vikas tries to help me with my luggage, I'm like, no, I can do it myself. Literally with the farmer's carry, you're going to feel it in your grip, your abs, and in your soul. It hurts to start, but start with lighter weights and scale your way up. And before you know it, you'll be there in no time.
Yeah. One of the other great things about farmer's carry is that it really helps with our core strength and good posture. When you're carrying weight down at your side, the natural thing to do is that in order for us to be able to carry the load correctly, we have to have our back straight and we have to contract our abs. There has to be an even contraction between our abs and our lower back muscles, as well as our obliques on our sides. And that is super, super helpful for preventing back injuries as we age and get older.
Yeah. And for women who have had children and may have a condition called diastasis recti, where their abdominal muscles have split, this is a really useful exercise to help strengthen that core as well.
Absolutely. Let's move on to one of the next ones. Number 6 is going to be the wall sit. Tell us what that is, Nisha.
Yeah. So the wall sit is when you sit against a wall with your knees bent at 90 degrees and you're holding that position as long as possible. And why does this matter? So a wall sit trains your glutes and your quads, and it's crucial for joint health, stair climbing, and fall prevention.
Yeah. So the average times for how long you can do this, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to do a wall sit before. It's not easy. The first time I did it, felt like at 15 seconds, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm supposed to do this for 30 seconds or 45 seconds. So the average time for men is between 45 and 75 seconds. And the average time for women is between 35 and 60 seconds.
Yeah. And for the top 25th percentile for 40-year-olds, for men, it's between 90 and 120 seconds. For women in their 40s for a wall sit, top 25th percentile is between 75 and 105 seconds.
Yeah. So literally you're bending your knees to about 90 degrees and you're leaning up against the wall. So the wall is giving you some support, but your quadriceps and your glutes are also doing quite a bit of work on a wall sit. So what is this really proving? It's really showing that if you are not at least average, then you have poor lower body endurance. And that really equates to a higher risk of falls and subsequently a higher risk of fracture. If you can't do this for an extended period of time, then you don't have as much muscle strength in your lower extremities. When you don't have as much muscle strength, you also tend to not have as much bone strength.
Yeah. And so this is why it's so crucial for those of us in our 40s to get a benchmark and start measuring now. Because the last thing we want to do is ignore this stuff and wait till we're 75 and we fall, we have a hip fracture. And as we know, there's a 30% mortality rate for women over the age of 65 that have had a hip fracture. So many of them never leave the hospital.
Yeah, that's in the first year after a hip fracture. That's both women and men. The next thing ties in nicely with the wall sit, and that is air squats. So I'm sure people have seen somebody at a gym before do squats where they have a barbell on their back and they're bending down with weight on their back. Air squats are the same thing. You're doing a squat, but it's just your own body weight. And you're not lifting anything other than your weight. It's literally just bending down until your butt is down to about 90 degrees in line with your knees, and then standing back up.
Yeah. So let's go through some average numbers for 40-year-olds. For men, on average, they can accomplish between 15 and 25 air squats. For women, it's between 12 and 20 squats for average. And the top 25th percentile for men, it's between 30 and 40 squats to be top 25th percentile. For women, it's between 25 and 35 air squats to be top 25th percentile.
Yeah, you'll see here that there's a little smaller gap between men and women. Men and women equally use our legs. Men tend to carry a little bit more weight in their upper body that's muscle weight than women, which is why there's a larger discrepancy in the upper body strength metrics between men and women, but there's a smaller discrepancy between men and women for the lower body. You know, some of the things that can affect this type of metric and performance. So you have to have decent hip mobility, you have to have ankle mobility. And let's face it, by the time we hit our 40s, a lot of times we've already had sports injuries, we've already had falls in the past, and those things may have prevented us from having good mobility. I encourage anyone who has some mobility issues to see a physical therapist, because you need to work out those mobility issues earlier rather than later. You're not getting it back at the age of 75. But at the age of 40 or 45 or 50, you have plenty of time to get that mobility back to where it needs to be. Other factors that affect it are quads and glute strength, balance and coordination, what shape your knees are in from an arthritis standpoint, and then also with many movements, right, core stability.
That brings us to at-home test number 8, and that is the sit to stand from floor test. What is a sit to stand from floor test? It's when you're sitting cross-legged on the floor and then you stand up without using your hands, knees, or other support. Why does this matter? A sit to stand from floor test reflects total body strength, mobility, and coordination.
This is difficult. There's people who can't even sit cross-legged on the floor anymore, right? Because they've lost range of motion in their hips and in their knees. And so that's number one. You have to be able to make sure that you've worked on mobility enough to be able to sit cross-legged. Then number two is, can you get up from that position without having to use your arms to help push you up? What we're looking for with the sit to stand is we want to be able to get to a point where we can do 9 to 10 of these without having to use our hands or without having to go to one knee as you're standing up. And what we know about this is that if you are able to get to somewhere around 8, then you are able to reduce your mortality by a factor of 2. So once you're able to do more than 8, you have built in some reserve by increasing the strength and your balance enough that we know your risk of falling has decreased. You've increase the muscle mass in your legs enough that you're enjoying a mortality benefit now.
I started being able to only complete 2 reps. And part of that is from my hip arthritis. And I learned that this is something, if I keep practicing, my mobility gets better. So if we're in our 40s and we are having range of motion issues, it's not getting any better if we're not working on these. Common fail point for adults over 50 is when they stop using it, they're going to lose it and it doesn't come back. So that's why the longer the runway we have, and we have a long runway in our 40s, we really should try and maximize those gains.
Yeah, our bodies are, fortunately and unfortunately geared towards some type of an efficiency. And so what your body really presumes is if you haven't been doing something, then what's most efficient is to not be prepared to keep doing that thing, right? So if you don't do squats and you don't practice getting up off the ground without using your arms, then your body says, well, this must be unnecessary. And I don't need to keep up the muscle mass. I don't need to keep up the coordination. And it allows those things to lapse because why expend resources in maintaining muscles, tendons, and ligament that you're not actually using?
And I think an important point is at some point, we are all going to fall, right? We hope we're not going to fall, but we do. Well, I fall more because I'm just a klutz. But if we fall when we're in our 60s, 70s, and 80s, we have to be training for getting up off the ground after that fall. And if we haven't done that motion in 3 decades, we cannot expect our body to perform when it needs to, especially after an injury.
It's kind of alarming. In the ER, we have so many patients where EMS bring in a patient and they're like, oh yeah, 76-year-old comes in for a fall today. But hey, doc, just to be honest, like we've been out to pick them up off the ground 6 times in the last 2 weeks. And this time, each previous time, the patient said that they didn't want to come into the hospital, but now they feel like they're weak and banged up enough that they have to be in the hospital because now they can't walk anymore. And so this is just a combination of they've let their coordination, they've left their strength diminish enough that they can't do those activities of daily living anymore. The goal is to not fall in the first place, right? Which is what happens if your balance is good and you've got muscle strength. You can make the adjustment in real time to prevent yourself from falling. And then the second is if you do happen to fall, because we're all going to fall at some point, do we have the strength to get back up on our own, or do we got to call somebody to help us? Heaven forbid, call 911 to help us.
So let's go to our last at-home test, number 9, and that is a single leg balance. So what is a single leg balance? It is when you stand on one leg with your eyes open, or if you really want to challenge yourself, you can close them for as long as possible. So why does a single leg balance matter? Single leg balance predicts fall risk, cognitive decline, and brain-body communication. So at the age of 40, target is to keep a single leg balance for 30 seconds with our eyes open and 5 to 10 seconds with our eyes closed.
This is huge, right? This is actually one of the tests that if you see a neurologist and they're doing a workup for neurodegenerative conditions like dementia, they'll have you do this because this is very predictive of whether you've suffered from some cognitive decline. And this is something that we should actively be training as we move into our 40s and beyond the 40s. Even if you find that you can't hold your balance for more than 3 or 4 seconds, that's fine. This is a skill that can be improved and you can definitely get to 30 seconds. It's just going to take some time and practice to get there. The awesome thing about this is that if you're practicing this and you start to get better, you're actually improving synapses in your brain, you're improving connections in your brain that are preventing you from developing cognitive decline. Just another important fact here is that if you're not able to hold this for at least 10 seconds, there's an 84% increase in all-cause mortality. That's how important it is for us to be able to maintain our balance.
Yeah, and 26% of adults between the ages of 53 and 64 cannot hold for 30 seconds. We don't want our listeners to be discouraged because this is something we have to train for, right? We're not just going to have awesome balance with a single leg stand right off the bat. We may be able to only keep our balance for 3 seconds to begin with, then 4 seconds. But if we are practicing this at least a couple times a week, you will get there. And balance is underrated and fixable.
This isn't super time consuming and this isn't particularly difficult. Your muscles aren't going to be shaking because you're trying to lift so much weight. This is a relatively simple test that we can do and a simple exercise that we can do that can significantly improve our long-term function and reduce our long-term risk of falls and mortality.
Oh, we've covered these 9 tests and just some final thoughts. These 9 tests are things that you can do at home. They're completely free and they cover the core of real health span, which is movement, strength, and resilience. And this is stuff that you can track on your own and reassess every 3 to 6 months and track your progress.
Absolutely. So Nisha shared some of her own metrics, for instance, pull-ups. And to know that you're going from 0 pull-ups to being able to do 5 or 7 pull-ups after a year and a half, that's awesome that change came within a year and a half time frame. But the goal is it doesn't really matter how long it takes to get there. Just once you dedicate to, I'm going to do this thing, then you've already changed the trajectory and you're already making the long-term gain, which is now you are not losing any function. You're not losing any balance. You're not losing coordination. You're actually gaining. And even if it takes 5 years to get to 1 pull-up, you didn't lose anything while the rest of the population did. You, in fact, gained over that 5-year period.
Yeah. So these are habits. These are not designed to be hurdles. What I did, I basically picked one and I worked on that for a few months. And then I picked another and I improved on that. And over time, you'll notice you are just going to improve. But when you look at all 9 of these, it sometimes feels impossible. Like I'm just not going to do any of it because this is all unattainable.
Yeah, this is not supposed to be discouraging. I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts. If somebody decides that they're going to take on resistance training, they can really make quite a bit of gain doing only 30, 35 minutes of strength training twice a week. Guaranteed, if you're doing kind of full body exercises, compound movements, and you're doing them for 30 minutes twice a week, you are going to improve in all of the metrics that we just talked about.
Yeah. So make sure you tag us with your wins. We want to cheer you on. We had mentioned many people struggle with 8 out of 9 of these tests or 9 out of 9, and that's okay. So you have to start somewhere. We really hope you enjoyed this episode, and please share this with a loved one in their 40s, 50s, anyone who wants to improve their health span.
Yeah, absolutely, Nisha. Just close with thank you for playing the long game with us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for playing the long game with MD Longevity Lab. You can visit us at www.mdlongevitylab.com to learn more about how we can support you on your journey. Stay connected with us on social media at MD Longevity Lab for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes insights. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, left us a rating, or shared it with someone you know who's also playing the long game. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.